Alright, good evening everyone. Kamusta kayo dyan, mga ka-meta, mga ka-spacers, ka-Xers, yan, hindi na siya Twitter, X na siya, at mga ka-YouTubers. It's a pleasure to join you guys again. Let's have a very quick overview of some of the big developments just over the weekend in the past few days. Aside from obviously our best wishes and our prayers dun sa ating mga kababayan who are dealing with etong sunod-sunod na mga typhoons, grabe talaga. We can see talagang grabe yung traffic. I can see it from here, building up yung traffic dito. And obviously yung pauwi kami from Baguio via NLEX, grabe yung NLEX mismo ay nabaha, especially yung isang bridge area, kaya we spend around 2 hours just going through barely 5 kilometers. It's an insane level, so like 2 kilometers an hour speed. That was an insane situation, so I can imagine how hard it has been para sa ating mga kababayan across the country dealing with this horrible situation. And I think that's why yung issue ng good governance ay napakamahalaga, because katulad ng pinag-usapan natin kahapon, at least it's good to know that we have certain mayors, we have, ayan, grabe na yung lightning, no? We have certain local government officials who are trying their best, no, to level up itong governance natin, dahil kung palpak yung level of governance natin, hindi maayos yung drainage natin, hindi maayos yung sewage natin, hindi maayos yung urban planning natin, hindi maayos yung zoning, mga regulations at implementations natin, mapapahamak talaga yung ating mga kababayan, no, who are very vulnerable dito sa effects ng climate change. The reality is that yung climate change problem is just gonna get worse. Nakita natin this year up until July, napakainit. Akala natin magkakaroon ng drought. The next thing you know, boom! Napakalakas naman ng ulan ngayon at sunod-sunod yung mga typhoons. So from Cordillera region down to here to Manila, I could see na even in the more developed regions of the country, gaano ka consequential, no? Just a bit of typhoon and next thing you know, grabe yung baha. Now, I wanted to actually originally talk about ito, and don't worry, we're gonna talk about that because kanina nakita niyo katulad ng interview natin with former Secretary for Political Affairs ni Aquino Jr. Aquino the Third, sorry. Aquino the Third. Junior, guess po. Aquino the Third, no? Si Ronald Llamas. We had a very long conversation. Please check out the version on YouTube kung saan pinag-usapan natin what are the ways to revive the Philippine opposition, what are the weaknesses of Philippine opposition, saan nakamaling opposition, lahat mga bagay na yan pinag-usapan natin, no? But now, I just felt that we need to also talk about another important development as far as Philippine politics is concerned over the past year or so, before we go dito sa issue ng opposition. By the way, meron din tayong scheduled interview with, once again, another interview with the good mayor of Baguio, Mayor Magalong. So watch out for that. God willing, tomorrow morning, we hope to go live again and have an interview with the good mayor and pag-usapan natin yung kanyang mga athikain. Pag-usapan natin ito yung Mayors for Good Governance Initiative. Pag-usapan natin sino yung mga kasama, bakit hindi pa kasama yung iba. I realized kanina nung pinost natin yung announcement, no, nung launching event of Mayors for Good Governance, marami nag-comment na bakit wala si Vico Soto doon, no? Or maraming ibang mga galing na mayors or LGU leaders na wala pa dyan. Don't worry, I believe this is just the beginning of it, and the hope is that more and more good mayors, progressive mayors will join along. They're not super dami, super good mayors, but I think we can easily talk about 10-20 really good mayors across the country and LGU leaders, no, who can join along and who can help along, no, to push for a new movement for governance. So natuwa po tayo dun sa mga response ng mga tao, natuwa po tayo dun sa mga very very positive comments, very very positive na responses, positive na constructive criticisms, no. For me, constructive criticisms are positive. All of these things, no, I am glad to see that, and I'm glad to see that, of course, I really wanted to talk more about this, no. I mean, where is Lenny and Riza going? Actually, upon further reflection, I think both Lenny and Riza are in a very good place, politically speaking. I think Lenny Robredo was absolutely correct to also, just sit it out, including yung mga sonas, sit it out, not to get into the whole drama, whole circus. rejuvenate herself, regather her forces, in a way, return to the above the phrase situation, the kind of a moral integrity, moral high ground situation where she found herself before all the troll armies were and worse was unleashed on her, during the previous administration. I think more and more we are seeing that there's a logic to that strategy. I will call that a strategy of strategic retrenchment. No, pag-usapan natin and just as Lenny, temporarily for now, is looking at strategic retrenchment, and I think they're seriously looking at the possibility of her running for local government office in the upcoming elections, and that could set up things very interestingly, especially if she becomes the mayor of Naga or governor of her region. So I think this kind of a safe strategic retrenchment, tactical retreat approach has its own value. At the same time, we also see with Riza Ontiveros that she's absolutely also taking the fight to not only the government, but to anyone that she believes is not embodying the spirit of democracy and good governance in the Philippines. So, kailan lang I bumped into the senator, I think on at least 2 occasions over the past few weeks, and I saw her very fresh, very rejuvenated, very determined, and really, on the right track as far as making sure that she stays on top of her portfolio of her cases, and at the same time builds alliances here and there. And I think so if you look at Riza Ontiveros, she's not just acting as quote-unquote opposition in sense of nega lang ng nega, but she's providing scrutiny, she's providing oversight, she's providing opportunities for coalition building. I know that she has a very good relationship also with other senators, including Senator Rafi Tulfo, so that provides room for all sorts of cross-ideological and cross-party or post-partisan, post-ideological coalition building, which has huge implications for Philippine politics coming months and years. But i-pause muna natin yan because I think that deserves a whole episode of its own. Let's just focus here on foreign policy, because over the past week, we saw that sunod-sunod, back to back, nakita natin itong mga foreign diplomats from no less than the European Union, the supposed bastion of human rights and democracy, the supposed bastion of good governance, the supposed bastion of democracy promotion, the supposed multilateralist organization and rule of law, supranational organization and body, the so-called defender of democracy and values and all of those things. We see that they are very much cozying up to the new administration in the Philippines, Marcos Jr. Now, to be fair about this, there's a logic to that. This is not about Marcos Jr. per se. Of course, this is about the Philippines. Philippines is a very valuable country to them, and actually major ups and downs in relationship with the European Union. I know this because I had the pleasure and privilege of visiting the European Union several times during the Duterte administration, just when Duterte was coming in, when Duterte was way into this administration. So we had some very good conversations with our friends in the European Union, quite at senior level. So I want to go back to this issue because if you look at it, so what happened over the weekend in the past few days is first, bumisita dito yung foreign minister ng Portugal, and then just shortly after, bumisita naman dito ang presidente ng European Union and someone who's widely expected to become the next head or Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This was also a person who back in the day was seen as a potential successor, if not the hand-picked successor of Angela Merkel to be the next chancellor, a Kanzler of Deutschland, of Germany. But here we are, we're talking about Ursula von der Leyen, who was here, because in German V is F, okay. Ursula von der Leyen, who was here over the weekend, and she had a very, very warm interaction, very, very warm reception from President Marcos Jr. And it's not like, diplomats of course are going to be nice and all, but I think there was really something special about this. And importantly, dito, during sa pagbisita ng presidente ng European Union, the two sides expressed their interest and their commitment to push the bilateral relationship to the next level, including by developing stronger defense and security partnership, right? pag-usapan natin yan because mahalaga yan. I think this is something very special, something important. For some reason, obviously, I mean, we know what's the reason, of course, to begin with, dahil sa bagyo, sa typhoon, the president going across the country, including to the north of country to look at yung mga super naapektadong lugar. Alam natin, medyo both the visit of the EU chief and at the same time also yung pagbisita ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. sa Malaysia were kind of overshadowed, no? And rightly by itong mga natural disasters and of course humanitarian concerns. But nevertheless, this is important. We have to talk about it. So, just over the weekend, the European Union expressed that it's ready to strengthen cooperation with the Philippines. Itong ayon sa European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Actually, it's Monday. Sorry, not over. She arrived over the weekend, but this is during the meeting on Monday sa Malacanang. Now, ayon sa kanya, we are ready to strengthen the cooperation with the Philippines on maritime security in the region, i.e. South China Sea, by sharing information, conducting threat assessment, and building the capacity of your Coast Guard. So clearly, the European Union is invested in capacity building, helping the Philippines, helping us to move in the right direction. Ayon sa kanila, the Philippines is a fulcrum of geopolitical rivalry between the US and China. I think this is how the Philippines is seen as kind of a key player in shaping the direction, shaping the dynamics of US-China competition in this part of the world. But what we are also seeing as more and more rising middle power, if not already a recent middle power. Ayon sa kanya, an Indo-Pacific free of the threats of coercion is key to all our stability, to our peace, and the prosperity of our people. Ayon sa EU chief, hindi mo pwede i-separate yung security ng Europe from the Indo-Pacific. It's indivisible. So the idea na, mga Europeo, dyan lang kayo sa Europe, focus lang kayo sa Ukraine, something I also hear a lot from some of the Americans. That doesn't make sense for the Europeans because a lot of European countries actually have direct interest here. Some of them have territories. So France and the United Kingdom, they have territories in the region, in the Pacific region, or Indian Ocean, or in the Indo-Pacific. Not to mention also these countries are permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, so they have global obligation to make sure that their safety, that their security and prosperity, and not to mention, of course, these countries, European countries, the European Union in general, collectively, also has very strong relationship with a number of ASEAN countries. And this is where I really want to focus. Okay, so actually Philippines and EU relations went through a kind of a roller coaster. Towards the end of the Aquino administration, it was seen as a special relationship. If you look at the promotional video of EU-Philippine relations, towards the end of the Aquino era, it would talk about shared values, Philippines as a rising democracy, as a rising tiger economy. Doon sa mga nagfe-fake news na sinasabi paano ni Tatay itong rising tiger. No, this was during Pinoy. 2012, 2013 pa lang sinasabi ng World Bank, the Philippines is the rising tiger economy. So, that was how they were seen. And then comes Duterte and boom, everything changes. But despite that, and I know this for a fact because, we talk to people who know their stuff and people who matter, but nevertheless, there was an effort to keep things on an even keel. So there were meetings between Mogherini, who was the former EU foreign policy and defense policy chief. She had meetings with President Duterte, including during the ASEAN summit here in the Philippines. So there were multiple attempts by the European Union to make sure the relations don't completely disintegrate. Even as Duterte was attacking the EU, even as Duterte was saying, wag kayong makialam, even as Duterte was supposedly giving them ultimatum na umalis kayo sa Pilipinas within 48 hours. All of those antics, all of those barangay geopolitics antics that we saw under the previous president. Despite all of that, they tried to keep it on an even keel. But the reality is that there was always a push by more progressive elements, S&D among others in the EU Parliament, especially S&D Alliance, to really respond to the situation in the Philippines, i.e. yung widespread extrajudicial killings and reports of massive human rights violations. So one of the things that the EU talked about was potentially reversing yung kanilang GSP Plus. So GSP Plus is a mechanism by which the Philippines can export products to Europe without any tariffs whatsoever. So it gives us a lot of competitive advantage because it makes our products very cheap. Now that GSP Plus was at the heart of back and forth between EU and the Philippines. And remember, EU is also a big contributor to Mindanao Peace Initiative, to a whole host of capacity building, technology transfer initiatives in the Philippines. And by the way, grant yan. Hindi katulad nung China ni Tatay Digong, hindi ito yung mga, alam niyo na, makano ulit yung mga vaccine na binenta sa atin. Okay, saan ulit yung mga big infrastructure projects na pinakako sa atin? Okay, anyway, now actually when it comes to EU, they give it for free, grant. I mean, this is for development of your country, this is for capacity building. So all of those things were kind of up for grabs, or rather they could slip through our fingers. But diplomacy, interventions, long-term, strategic thinking, all of those things contributed to making sure na hindi totally mag-disintegrate yung bilateral relationship natin with the European Union. So once Marcos comes in and Marcos warms up to the United States, takes a tougher stance on China, I think our European friends felt that, okay, things are moving in the right direction. This is time for us to come in. And we're here not to be another America or to be kind of a Robin to America. We're here to be our own Batman. Right? We're here to be an alternative pole of power to work with the Philippines and encourage the Philippines to move in the right direction. Yun yung approach ng European Union. And I think they also realize that the Philippines is kind of fickle geopolitically. That, anytime we can shift back again to Tatay-style geopolitics, especially if another, who takes over as the president. Or even Bongbong Marcos, as I mentioned, suddenly, recalibrates for a whole number of reasons that we explained in our articles and our vlogs before. Di ba may proposal nga si Digong gawin special envoy pa sa China? Special envoy for China or special envoy? Anyway, balikan natin ito. Now, great stuff, great diplomacy on the part of EU, great effort to make things not fall apart totally. But right now, as the two sides come together, we have a president who constantly travels, who's in Europe, he meets European diplomats who come here. That's good, that's great. But we really have to move to the next level. And I think this is where I really want to see more from this bilateral relationship. Especially because, if we have stronger ties with EU, which is the second or third largest economy on earth, depending on how you count it, we're less dependent on the whole US-China thing. We're in a better position to build ties with alternative poles of power, right? And EU is not US in terms of military power, but it has a massive economy and not so insignificant military technology. Now, going back to this, may kulang talaga dito sa bilateral relationship natin to EU. So EU has been very generous when it comes to grants. EU has been generous in terms of giving us preferential treatment in terms of our exports under GSP+. EU has tried to be very patient and constructive in engagement with the Philippines, including and especially during the Duterte administration. But may pagkakulang talaga itong relationship natin. And one of the things that has annoyed me when it comes to our conversation with our European counterparts is this. Whenever I raise this issue, bakit ang Pilipinas wala pa rin free trade agreement with the European Union? Because that will allow us to even export more to Europe. Remember, Europe is here to buy products from Asia. They are, by some measure, the wealthiest consumer market on earth, right? They have the biggest middle class of any region. And EU also has a lot to offer in terms of high-tech production that they could also move to our region of the world, right? Now, the thing is this. One of the excuses I keep on hearing, or one of the reasons, justification, is that, meron pa rin kaming concerns dun sa human rights or democracy sa Philippines. Now, obviously, I'm the last person to say, we have no problem with human rights and democracy. We absolutely have a lot of problems. A former president of us could potentially be subjected to ICC warrant of arrest in the future, or at least some of the top officials from the former administration. So the situation is not ideal, sure. But this is what annoys me. The Europeans kind of cite human rights and democracy as an excuse to say why we don't have a free trade agreement with them. By the way, we also don't have a free trade agreement with the US, which is another annoying thing. But guess what? The European Union has a free trade agreement with Vietnam, all right? With Vietnam. So just the other year, the National Assembly of Vietnam ratified the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, FTA, and EU-Vietnam Investment Protection Agreement, EVIPA, at its ongoing 9th session dyan sa Hanoi. No? So Vietnam, there are a lot of things I love about Vietnam, but clearly Vietnam is not a democracy in any sense that we understand the word democracy in terms of liberal democracy, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, etc. It's a one-party communist state. Let's just get real here, okay? So if you want to talk about human rights and democracy, but they have an FTA with Vietnam, I mean, between Philippines and Vietnam, who's more conventionally understood as democratic? Who has fair and competitive elections, or at least a semblance of fair and competitive elections? Who has at least a semblance of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly? I mean, come on, right? Come on. We got problems in the Philippines, but in terms of democracy and openness, the Philippines is way ahead of almost everyone in ASEAN. Maybe Indonesia and Malaysia kind of can give us some competition, but clearly the Philippines, of course, the bar is very, very low, is the most democratic country, open country in entire Southeast Asia. No question about it. Not to mention, of course, the European also have an FTA with Singapore. Now, these two countries were not invited to the Democracy Summit of Biden for a reason, right? There's a reason why they were not invited to the Democracy Summit. So this is also this. So this is the Singapore EU Free Trade Agreement. So both Singapore and Vietnam, which by no means constitute any kind of a liberal democracy, to put it nicely, have free trade agreements with EU. So clearly, this is all about geoeconomic interests. You know, Vietnam is a manufacturing powerhouse now. A lot of production of Apple and many multinational companies like Samsung is moving to Vietnam. Singapore, of course, is a financial superpower. It's an entrepot. It's a global financial hub. So, and it's, entrepot in terms of, trade and investment flow across ASEAN and beyond. So the EU raising concerns with human rights as a basis for saying, I'm not sure what an FTA with the Philippines doesn't make sense. In fact, more interestingly, the EU also has a defense agreement with Vietnam. All right? And I wrote about it. So, again, they love to talk about shared values, etc. But as far as political system is concerned, is Vietnam's political system more similar to Europe, or is the Philippines more similar to Europe? I mean, obviously, again, none of us in Southeast Asia are really a legitimate, full-fledged democracy. I accept that, but seriously, diba? So I won't use the word hypocrisy, but I just find a lot of problem with some of these arguments I'm hearing from EU or apologists for EU. Right now, this doesn't mean, of course, that that we should just fault EU. Of course, the Philippines has to do its part. We have to make our markets more competitive. We have to become a more important manufacturing power. Yes, we have to make sure yung mga batas natin ay sang-ayon dun sa international standards. But we have been doing that, and we're moving in that direction. I just feel, sa akin palagay, we have not been prioritized by EU enough. I for some reason, EU doesn't seem to have seen the Philippines as important enough, even if the Philippines has the closest form of political system to them. Not to mention, it's also a US treaty ally. Sila under NATO system, and the Philippines under the bilateral MDT with the United States. So with all of those very fundamental similarities, at least by ASEAN standards, I find that kind of strange that Philippines and EU relations are so underdeveloped, especially when compared to a communist single-party state, which is Vietnam, right? Sige, yung Singapore, pagbigyan na natin kasi Singapore yan, diba? But, diba? So, these are the things I'm looking at. So, I appreciate the fact that we're moving in the right direction. We're getting more respect. We're getting more international recognition. But it has to be more than symbolic. It has to be more than just recognizing the Philippines is important. And at the same time, I think it's very, very important na EU doesn't give an impression that because the Philippines is important in the broader Indo-Pacific geopolitical game, they're just gonna turn a blind eye to some of the lingering human rights, democracy, and corruption problems that we have in the Philippines. And corruption was precisely what was the context of our conversation kahapon, and why Mayor Magalong has been making waves over the past few weeks by raising that issue. And of course, my haters, there are people who are gonna push back against that. May mga nataman, hindi naman pinangalanan, hindi ko maintindihan saan galingan. So wait it out, and we're gonna have an interview with also Mayor Magalong soon, God willing, and discuss more of this. But I just felt that for some reason hindi masyadong diniscuss itong very high level visit by the European Union, and I feel this was a very, very important, very, very, very important visit. I think it says a lot. It says a lot about how geopolitics is so important that not only are they welcoming, but they're fully embracing the Philippines under the sole son, namesake son of a former strongman, to put it mildly. No, but as I said, I think not only should EU push the level of bilateral relationship to new heights by just not just helping us with their coast guard and here and there, or just not taking away what they already gave us, but by putting something substantial on the table, including a free trade agreement. Now, of course, the Marcos part, we also have to do our part. We have to show that we're serious people. We have to show that we're serious about moving in the right direction. And I think President Marcos Jr. has to have the right secretaries or envoys to go to the EU, especially deal with the EU Parliament, where there are many critical parties, no, who are not impressed with the Philippines, nor impressed by Marcos Jr. So you have to have the right person also to deal with that, and we cannot afford amateur hour and alam mo yung DDS style, blogger style kind of commentaries that I heard, no, from my contacts na lumabas dun sa mga during visits of some of our top officials to the EU Parliament. No, we cannot have any of that. We need high level, serious time conversation and discussion and diplomacy and engagement. All right, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. This is very nice. Okay, wow, meron tayong mga dyan, mga trolls dyan sa YouTube. Alright, thank you so much again. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga sumasubaybay sa atin. Ayan, nabulol tayo. Kay Ma'am Eden Olona, of course, as always, Ma'am Jocelyn Lumberry, very kind of you. Kay Nordrin Dalmasio for kind comments. Kay Sheikha Sai, kay Gina Ventura, Angelina Simons, kay Abigail Almo, kay Cecil Abel Francisco. Thank you very much for your kind comments. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned. Yeah? Soon, pag-usapan natin also good governance in the Philippines with no less than Mayor Magalong. Thank you very much.